Just 1 minute. Okay. Good morning once again. I hope every one of us you're enjoying your Salah break. And I'm having a good time myself. But is it Eid Mubarak, I guess? So I will not say it's a Salah break, Abi. Is that how? I don't really know, but once again, I welcome everyone to this call. You already know my name, but I have someone special in our midst today. His name is Solomon Jeremiah. He's actually going to help us to conclude the last part of this M365 module, and also he's going to be the one to he's going to touch base on what we did last week. Like I said, my internet was not so good, and I think it flowed the presentation and all of that, and the constant excuses from the recording. So I wish that that didn't happen, but it was what it is. But Solomon is here to do justice to the final module in the M365 course. And also, like I said, it will touch what we have done last week. Solomon is a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in the Azure Award category. He's an Azure Solution Architect, a Microsoft 365 expert, especially mostly on the modern workplace. He's also a Microsoft Security Subject Matter Expert, a Technical Support Engineer, and a Microsoft Certified Trainer. I'm sure when we get on the call, Solomon will do more justice to all his title because I'm not able to do more on it. I'm sure of that. But we have a very wonderful person in our midst, and then he's going to be taking us, as I said. So, but before it starts, let's have our housekeeping rule. This session, you all know, will be recorded and will be made available for future viewing. And then, please, at no time should you have your microphone on if you're not talking or when it is not a Q&A session. I would rather prefer that you mute your microphone so that you do not distract not only the trainer, but the rest of the people that are listening in. I would rather prefer that you have your question penned down to the Q&A session. And if there is anything that you needed to notify us on, please use the raise hand button and then I can quietly ask for what you want. Also, follow us on our social media handles on Twitter and then subscribe also to the YouTube channel to keep you updated on all the events. Our code of conduct, we've already know, and then again, I'll repeat it. Please encourage, we encourage respectful listening. Um, please try to avoid any blame, speculation, or inflammatory language. Allow everyone a chance to speak. We all have equal opportunity to speak here. Avoid assumptions about others, mainly based on your perceived social group. We will also want to promote openness to the point of view and increase learning, prevent conflict and understanding. Um, like I said, everybody has the right to speak. So if you criticize the idea, it is okay, but not the person, the individual. But even in criticizing the idea, I'm sure you will do it in a very respectful and then a more in a very respectful way and a more professional way. And lastly, please listen carefully and actively while the class is on. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to um, I'm going to be handing over to Solomon. Solomon, please, over to you. Solomon, yes, you're not you're still muted.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Sorry, my my teams got missing. I'll just try to bring it up. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. My name is Solomon Jeremiah. I'm a Microsoft MVP with in the Azure category, and I'm also a an Azure expert, modern workspace consultant, and yeah, Teams voice expert. So basically, if I want to summarize my, if I want to summarize my bio, I just tell people I'm that guy that likes to learn, research, and then build stuff. So that's just the basic summary I can give about myself. So today I would just be going through what we did last week. I'll just try to touch them, and I'll also try to see how I can probably do a small demo for the ones that I can before we get to where we are going today. So before I continue, I would just share my screen now, and then I would, so my screen should be up now.
Yes, I can see your screen now.
Okay, so this is what I would do now. Let me pull my slide. Yes, I will just start. Okay, yes. So today we'll be talking about describe the services and identity types for Azure AD. So that's where we'll be starting today. And when I go next, we'll see module 1 introduction, describe Azure AD, describe identity types that Azure AD supports. So when we come here, right, we'll see we have Microsoft's Azure Active Directory, part of the Microsoft Entra, right? So Microsoft Entra is probably, if you're just new to M365, right? This is a new naming. Before, when you go to that place, you just see the Active Directory. That's why you're seeing the name Active Directory as part of the Microsoft Entra. So the Microsoft Entra is a new product, right? And it encompasses all of the Microsoft identity and access capability. Now it includes the Active Directory, and it has new products, which includes cloud infrastructure entitlement management and decentralized identity. So, but today I want to just talk more about the Active Directory, right? For us to get to the Active Directory, we need to go through the Entra on our M365. So if you probably have your M365, you just need to go to the, I'll go there and show you how to get there. But now when we are talking about the Active Directory itself, the Active Directory is a cloud-based identity and access management service. So if we are talking about identity access management, as we know now, basically most of the things they are moving to the cloud, and when we need to access those resources we have on the cloud, the easiest way for us to access those resources, if I probably have a resource in the cloud and you want to access that resource, you have to go with your identity. And when you use identity, you would authenticate, and then you'll be authorized to the resource that you have access to. Now, I just made mention of authenticate, and I made mention of authorization. So authentication just simply means you're verifying that you are who you are. Like you come here and you want to access something, and you're saying, okay, I am Jeremiah Solomon. Okay, confirm you're Jeremiah Solomon. Put in your username, put in your password, and once the identity provider, which is the Azure Active Directory, confirms that, verifies that, okay, this person is actually Solomon Jeremiah. Now, what access, what authorization do we give to Solomon Jeremiah? How do we know the resources that Solomon Jeremiah can actually gain access to? So that's the next thing, the authorization. That's where authorization comes in. I always give the examples. One simple example I always give people is probably if you're going to the airport, right? When you get to the airport, there's always somebody that will be like telling you, show me your ID card to prove that you're the person. And when you show the person your ID card, the person will be like, okay, this is your name, it matches your face, right? You probably tell the person, my name is this. The person doesn't know you, but the person needs your ID card to look at the face, to look at your face, and it's okay. This guy is actually Jeremiah. Now you can go in. Now, when you get into the airport, right, you already have your pass. And by the time you have your pass, right, the next level is, where are you going to be sitting? Are you going with the business class? Are you going with economies? They'll have to still say, okay, let's see what is on your ticket, right? Your authorization is okay. You can access this area in the plane. So that's just how authentication and authorization work. And when we are talking of identity provider, the Azure Active Directory is the identity provider for Microsoft, right? So one thing most people make a very big mistake about when they are starting their journey around M365 Microsoft is confusing Azure Active Directory with Azure and Active Directory. So there are a lot of active in Microsoft, right? Directory active, you'll see a lot of them, right? But you just need to understand what each of them do, right? So if you look at so since we are not doing much of the other active, right? We are just looking at the Azure Active Directory. What you should know is that if you're using Azure, Azure is the cloud itself, right? The Azure cloud itself, it has a lot of services. And if you are using M365, M365 is SaaS application, right? But now, if you're trying to use this SaaS application, if you've used the M365, right, you're going to the admin center, you have to create a user. Now, that user you're creating, what is going to manage the identity of the user you're creating? What is going to manage access, right? What is going to manage the roles you'll be giving users that's where the Active Directory is coming in. Now, this Active Directory is also a service in Azure, which is the cloud platform itself. So you just try to understand that Active Directory is not Azure, and Active Directory is a service in Azure and is also part of the services you pay for when you're subscribing for M365. So if we look at this slide, we have Microsoft Entra is the product family that encompasses all the Microsoft identity and access capability, including Microsoft Azure Active Directory, yeah. So Azure AD is Microsoft cloud-based identity and access management service. Capability of the Azure AD include organization can enable their employees, guests, and others to sign in and access the resources they need. So you can sign in, access resources you need, provide a single identity system for their cloud and on-premises application. So you can have one single identity for your on-prem and your cloud application. Then we also have protect user identity and credentials to meet an organization access governance requirements. We also have each Microsoft 365, Office 365, Azure, and Dynamics 365 online subscription automatically uses the Azure AD tenant. So you can see that Microsoft, they have this products I'm talking about. I'm talking about Microsoft 365, the Office 365 Dynamics. They are all from Microsoft. And once you subscribe to any of them, you get this service, right? This Azure AD attached to your subscription, your tenant that you're creating. So now let's go to what we have next. When we're also talking of identity types, right? We can see from the slide, Azure AD manages different types of identity. And if we're looking at the identity, we can see the user one of the identity types is the user, right? The users, their identity. Users, they authenticate. You create a user account, and the user account can authenticate. We also have the devices, right? Devices, remember, once we are talking about the cloud, right? Anything we do in the cloud, there's an endpoint where we come from, right? And that's our device. I'm probably talking to you now in this Teams meeting, and this Teams is under Textile tenant, and I'm trying to access this, and I'm using a device, right? The device can also, when we go towards security, right, you can see that the device also can also be a point where attackers can use to come into your tenant, right? So the device itself needs an identity, right? So we can always secure those endpoints also. And when we are talking about another identity type, there's what we call service principal. So what service principal actually means is just when you create an application in AD tenant, it automatically creates a service principal identity for you. With this service principal, that's what the applications they use for authentication. So the next one we have is the managed identity. So this managed identity is just the same thing with the service principal. The only difference is that you don't really have access to the password. And when you're creating this managed identity, right, you can actually create system assigned and user assigned, right? So what this simply means, if we are talking about roles, right, or we are trying to give a particular resources, we want to assign a role to a particular resources, we can actually use this managed identity. And when we're using the system assign, it just simply means that if we delete this resource, that particular identity goes with the resource. But when we have a user assign, we can keep using the identity even after we have deleted the resources, the resource that we use it for. We can use it for multiple resources. Let me put it that way, right? So the system assigned goes with the resource once we are done with it, right? And it's assigned to just one resource. But the user assigned, right? What it does is like a standalone identity, and we can use it to access different resources. And the difference is you don't really get to manage the password for the managed identity. So that's one of the types of the identity when we are talking about the Azure AD identity type. So if I go next, yeah, so we have this, right? We have external identities. So if we go to the Microsoft Entra, right, where we have the Active Directory, we'll see that one of the services we'll find there is the external identities. So what does this external identity do for us, right? If you have a tenant now and you want to, the word there collaboration is just so clear, right? It's already telling us what is happening. So if I don't want to use the word collaboration. If I have like my tenants now and I want to give access to someone, right, that have their own tenants or probably an external user, external guest with B2B collaboration, I could invite those people to come into my own tenant and access resources in my tenant, right? And if you look at the definition there, we have B2B collaboration allows you to share your apps and resources with external user. So with the B2B collaboration, I can choose to set up my tenant. You have your tenant, and I want you to come into my tenant, do what you want, take access any resource I have, maybe an application, and once you're done, I can choose to say, okay, I don't want you in my tenants anymore. So with B2B collaboration, we can actually achieve that. And when we are doing this with B2B collaboration, we have extra settings that we can do to manage the authentication. We can choose to block our organization from users in our in our organization from collaborating with other organizations. We can adjust the settings for B2B collaboration, right? But for B2C, on the other end, is more like I have an application that is facing the, let me say, customers, consumers, right? I have an application that is facing outside my organization, and I want people that should come in, sign into those applications with their own external identities. Now they are not coming in like the B2B collaboration where they have access to different resources. I have an app that is set up and I want them, okay, if you want to sign up, you can just use your own identity, sign up, consume the app, and when you're done, you can delete your identity and go, right? So that's what B2C does, access management. So B2C is an identity management solution for consumers and customers facing apps. So you have your applications, you have these consumers, they are coming in to use the application, they can use the identity, set up the identity, do what they want to do on your applications, and when they're done, they can always just delete and go. They don't really have access to your internal resources. So that's exactly what B2C does. If we go to hybrid identities, so when we're talking of hybrid identities, right, I've been talking about the Azure Active Directory, and I've been making mention of they come to your tenants and all of that. Now, before the Active Directory, we always have what we use, which is before the Azure Active Directory. So you can see that even me that know the difference, I still somehow to say Active Directory. But once I'm saying Active Directory, I'm actually saying a different thing, right? Active Directory is for the on-prem, right? So for organization, they've been using Active Directory, right? And basically what Active Directory does is a directory service that Microsoft has, and you can use it to control, manage your network, resources, devices on your on-prem environment. Now we have the cloud, and the cloud is giving us the Azure Active Directory, right? So imagine an organization that have users in their on-premises. They have an environment, they have servers where they have users that were created there. And now there's a solution for cloud, and probably they have cloud. Some organization, they are probably recent. It doesn't really have to be an old enterprise organization. Some recent organizations, they still use the Active Directory because of some stuffs they want to get that they can't get from some features they can't get in the Azure Active Directory. So if you have the on-premises, right, environment, and now you have those users there, those users definitely they will have their username and password. And if you have their devices joined to your server, anytime they want to authenticate, what they would basically be doing is they'll be using the username and password you created for them to authenticate in the on-premises environment. Now you're talking about M365. We have the M365, and you have another set of users. Probably they're not even another set. You have the same users, but now these users, they have identity in the on-prem environment and they have in the cloud, and they will definitely have different password. Even if you try to use the same password for them, the password policies for the on-prem environment might be different from that of the cloud, and it can change their password at any time without having anything to do with the cloud environment. So a way to solve this issue so that users can manage just one identity so that they don't have multiple password with different identities, right, is the AD Connect tool. So what this AD Connect tool does for us, it will sync our users from on-prem when we install the engine to the cloud. And once it does that, the users can now authenticate on our cloud environment, and they can still use the same identity to authenticate on-prem. Now, when they're also doing that, if you look at that, they now have the same password. That's one. And when this sync engine is doing its work, we can choose to set it up the way we want. We can choose to say we want the password from the on-prem to sync to cloud, and when they want to authenticate, they authenticate from cloud. We can choose to say when they are authenticating, the authentication should take place in on-prem. So if those cloud users try to authenticate, the Active Directory, the Azure Active Directory will send the authentication and verify it on-prem, then allow them to gain access to those resources. So that's exactly what the AD Connect does. Now, those users that we synced from on-prem to cloud, those are the hybrid identity. So when we look at this slide, they say hybrid identity is a common user identity for authentication and authorization to all resources regardless of location, on premises and cloud. Just simply means it's a common, it uses a common identity to authenticate to resources. That means if we have resources on-prem, the user can have access to it. If the user wants to gain access to resources on cloud, the user can also do that with the same identity. So with AD Connect, updates to your on-premises Azure Directory Domain Services are synchronized to Azure AD. So all the objects you have, they would be synced, and when they are synced, they'll be synchronized. And once they synchronize, they'll synchronize to your Azure AD, and then you can easily use the same identity. Now, when we are talking of hybrid identity method, now the first authentication method here is the password hash, right? So what happens when we are using the password hash is just we are telling the AD Connect tool when we are setting it up that please, when you're syncing these users, kindly sync their password to, and once you're syncing it to Azure Active Directory, simply means that when these users they want to authenticate in the cloud, Azure Active Directory doesn't need to come back to the on-premises Active Directory to say, oh, please verify this authentication, right? The password is already there, so it will verify it. So when we are talking of the password hash, there are a lot of process that goes on. But the idea, right, is once there is password hash, there is a process of encryption that goes on. What the on-prem environment does, it doesn't just send the password. So there are different stages of encryption and hashing that goes through the password just to make sure that the password is very, very secure and encrypted before it sends it to the Active Directory. And once that is done, the password sits there and authentication takes place there. So that's why you see the word hash. So if you probably check what hash means, you'll probably see is one of the encryption types. When we are talking of encryption, you get to understand that hash is there. Then when we are talking of pass-through authentication, right? What pass-through authentication does is there's an agent that is installed on-prem, and once these users once they want to authenticate, that agent would manage the authentication that is going to take place. So this simply means that if you're trying to log in, the the authentication process would go back to your on-premises Active Directory to reach that agent, and once it reaches that agent, then if the agent verifies that your credentials are correct, then you can sign in. Then we have federated authentication. So this federated authentication just simply means we are using proxy servers. We set up different servers that would be handling authentication. So this part of authentication is actually, in terms of configuration, there's a lot of work to be done when you're configuring the federated authentication. So while this was, a lot of job processes needs to follow and probably cost, right? Because of this, that was why we have the password authentication, because Microsoft was thinking, we know that most people, they want their password to remain in their on-premises environment. What can we do to meet that need? And coming up with what can handle the password in on-premises environment. That's why we have the pass-through authentication, and then we no longer, we still use the federated authentication, but we no longer have to be building a lot of servers, right? Proxy servers to handle our authentication. So that's exactly what this particular slide is talking about, the hybrid identity. Those users that are synced to the cloud, they can access resources from the cloud, and also they can access resources from the on-premises Active Directory using the same identity. So now we have conditional access. So for conditional access, right, I always tell people when we hear conditional access, the name itself is explanatory, right? You know, there are some stuffs. If I ask you, do you know what is Azure Active Directory? You're asking me Active Directory, like you've not heard what Active Directory is. But if I say conditional access, I tell people it's more like English, right? I'm speaking what you understand. So conditional access is just you need to meet this condition for you to access. So I'm giving you a condition, and if you meet that condition, yeah, then you're free to access what you need to access, right? Or you would, if you don't meet a particular condition, you won't access a particular resource. So for conditional access, you still look at it, right? Condition, right? I'm telling you, can you come and see me today, or can we meet somewhere? And you say, it depends on the condition. And also, what's the condition? You say, if it is raining, I can't come out. Or if the sun is too hot, I can't come out. So if maybe we are supposed to meet somewhere and tomorrow, and by tomorrow it is raining, you tell me, oh, sorry, I can't come out. So the condition for you to come out is that the rain should not fall, right? And once the rain is not falling, then you would come out, right? So for conditional access, Microsoft is actually trying to see how they can control who is going to be accessing resources. And now when we are trying to go through these conditions, right? When we are trying to follow this conditional access, right? Microsoft uses signals, right? So they use signals they get. And when we are talking of these signals can be coming from your device, the user location, the application, or real-time rigs, right? So when this signal comes in, with this signal, Microsoft will make a decision, and once they make that decision could be, okay, allow full access, block access. These decisions are made from the signal, based on the signal that Microsoft is receiving, right? And once the decision is made, then enforcement can take place. We can choose to say, okay, now this is what is happening. This user is signing in from this location, and this location, we blocked this location, right? So at this point, block access. The person can't get to the data. But then we can choose to say, this person is working in this location, right? And we don't want to probably stop productivity. We don't want to stop a staff from, or an employee from working just because they traveled for holiday somewhere outside our working environment. But what we can do, we can try to see how we increase our security for that particular employee, because they are working outside of the location we want them to work. So what we'll do is, if we get a signal that this employee is signing in from a particular location, now tell this employee that they need to provide multi-factor authentication. So at this point, this employee would probably be typing in their username and password to access data, but immediately they move to a different location. What's going to happen at that point? The signal will be sent that this employee is working from this location, and the next thing will be, okay, at this point, decision has been made. You have to provide us with your multi-factor authentication. So if you provide the multi-factor authentication, we'll grant you access. But if you do not, then we can tell you, okay, you can't access the information. So if you look at the conditional access signals, we say user or group membership, right? So you can set it based on the users or the group membership. I'll just do a little demo on this from the portal, right? So we can use named location, right? We can use devices, we can use application, we can use real-time sign-in rates detection. So if we're using sign-in rates, right, basically we have two stuffs that you still need to just understand what they are. We have the sign-in rates and the user rates. So for sign-in rates is when you sign in, right? Microsoft, they have their technology, their AIs and everything. They note that they are seeing that this signing, the password is correct, right? The username is correct, but this signing doesn't look like the real person that have this account. It is a suspicious signing, right? And now suspicious signing can come up from impossible travel. It can come up from maybe we have leaking leak. I'm trying to remember the name, leaking password or so. I can't remember the name, but I think that should be for user rates. But once you sign in, right, and this sign in is suspicious, what Microsoft would do, right, when you're setting up conditional access, if we have a sign-in risk, the next thing that Microsoft would say you should trigger should be MFA, because the person is actually signing in. Everything looks correct, right? But it's a suspicious signing. We don't trust who is actually signing in at that point, right? Now, what Microsoft will do is it will say enable MFA, right? So immediately you enable MFA, that user at that moment, once they sign in, the next thing they will get is, can you provide us with MFA? Now you need to provide another level of secure authentication so that you can prove that you're actually who you are. And at that moment, if they don't prove, they can't access the resources. So for the user rates is Microsoft feels that this person information has been compromised based on information they get, right? They have AIs that probably scan through the dark web, scan through all these portals where we probably have information of leaking password and the rest of it. So if they kind of match it with a particular user information and they find out that this user is probably at risk, what Microsoft will do is they will prompt that user to reset their password. So you can as well set this up also using conditional access, that if we see that the sign-in rate is probably high or medium, you can set this in the Active Directory. If we see it is high, medium, okay, now trigger this. This is the decision that we are going to take. If we see that the user rate is probably high or medium, trigger this. If we see that the person is signing in with this particular device, we don't want this device to sign in, then okay, block or give access. We can choose to say, okay, this location, we've gone to create a location that we don't want anybody to access our tenant from. If anybody is coming from there, okay, block the person or ask the person for MFA. So we can do all of that. So that's basically what MFA does, right? And if you see the access control, we can choose to block access, grant access, require one or more conditions to be met before granting access, control user access based on session controls to enable limited experience within specific cloud application. So session control is just based on if this user closes their browser and open their browser, should we ask them for MFA again? Should we log them out? That's basically what session control does. If we probably lose connection with this user, right? Should that token still be working that was sent? You know, we already granted the user access based on a particular token. Should that token expire? All those stuff just have to do with session, right? So, and all of that can be done using the conditional access. So let's see what we have next. So, okay, I think I'll just do this, then I'll see how I'll go back to the portal and just navigate my way around. So if we look at Azure role and Azure Azure roles and role-based access control. So if we're talking of this, basically what are we really talking about when we talk about roles and role-based access control? So this topic, to be frank, most times there's a lot of confusions there. Like someone would say Azure AD role and Azure roles. They're actually two different things that you're doing. If we talk about the Azure AD roles and there's Azure roles. Now, role-based access control just simply means we are giving permission to admin, but now we are fine-graining the permissions we are giving. We are giving people roles based on the resources they need access to. That's exactly what role-based access control does. But now when we are talking of the Azure AD roles, right, it allows you to have permission to, or gives you a privilege to access a particular resource, right? We have built-in roles, we have custom roles, then we have the categories of Azure AD roles, that's Azure AD specific, service specific, cross service, then we have only grant the access user needs. So when we are talking of only grant the access user need, we still have what we call PIM, right? Which is privilege identity management, where you only give access to people based on this person has, we are giving you access, right? We say, okay, you have this permission to go in there and reset user password. Now, the fact that you have that permission is not turned on that user. So that user would probably be a normal user. The user can just be doing normal stuff like other user. They can't reset, but anytime they want to use that permission, they can always go in, turn on the permission for themselves, and when they turn on this permission, another admin can approve it if they want. Depending on how you set it, you can choose to just say once they turn it on is fine. You can choose to say they should provide a justification on why are they turning it on. So when they provide the justification, they click on turn on. They also specify the amount of time that this permission should be turned on, right? So if they specify the amount of time and they turn on this permission, you that is probably the global admin, you would probably get to see it. It's not really the global admin, it can just be the head of the department, right? You will see the justification that the person sent, and you can look through the justification. This person say he wants to go in and reset. Maybe somebody is complaining about their accounts being locked, and he's saying he needs 8 hours to reset one password. Why do you need 8 hours to reset one password? So with the PIM, right, you can actually use that to control how you give permissions to people, and they use it only when they need those permissions. So those are the different ways we can also assign permissions to people in Azure. Now, when we are talking about the Azure AD roles, right? For the Azure AD roles, right? These are permissions that you get, and this permission is for you to manage your, how will I put it? These permissions are on your Azure tenant. You're getting this permission, and this permission is going to be reflecting on your Azure AD tenant. That means if I give you the global admin role, you would have that permission on the AD tenant, and you can manage identity in that tenant, right? You can manage identity, manage applications in that tenant with the Azure AD roles that I'll be giving you. But if we talk of Azure roles, now for Azure roles, if I'm giving you an Azure role, I'm probably giving you that Azure role for a particular resources or a particular scope. So I could choose to give you owner role. So with owner role, you probably have the ability to create a resource. You can probably create VMs, build VMs, delete it. You can read, write, and do all those stuff with the owner role. But if you have that owner role and you probably try to create, go to Active Directory to create a user, you discover that owner role is big, right? I can read, build resources, and I can't create a user, right? So having that Azure role is just for you to manage resources. It is not for you to manage identity in the Azure AD. So that's what you should just try to understand. I will still show you how it looks like. So the AD role, you can have it for billing, management, application, your global admin, user administrator. But for the Azure role, right, you can use that for owner, contributor, reader, like you just have those other roles. And those are the scope that you will be covering for that particular role is just your resources. So you should try to understand it. Why I'm telling you this is also because most times when you're using M365, right, and you don't use the Azure, right, you don't tend to see some stuff, right? That's why I always still advise people, even if you want to use M365, just try and see what's happening at the other end, right? Because if you see what's happening at the other end, you can see the Active Directory is there, you can see those services, and then you just see some little stuff. Even if you don't need to use it, we have a lot of services in Azure. You can't know everything. Some people might know, but it is going to be very hard to know every service there because there are a lot, right? But you can understand how they work, right, to some level. So even if you just want to probably see some of the services, see how they work, like, oh, the Azure AD role, okay, this is how you assign it, okay, and this is the Azure role, this is how you assign it. So you can use that to understand how both of them work. But in general, just know that the role is just how we grant granular permissions to admins, right? And then with that, we can control what people have access to and the resources people can control within our organization. So let me move to the next one. I just want to see what's here before I go. Okay, so I would pause here and let me just do this. I'll end the show. So I've been talking about Azure. So I'll just try to see how I can. Let me just, I want to see, I want to trace where I stopped. So if we come to if you come here, this is admin.microsoft.com, like very important. If you're learning about M365, this is why you're learning about it. You're not learning about it because of office.com. Office.com is just to download the app, use the app, and just go to apps and all of that. But once you're learning it, right, you're learning about the modern workspace, you should understand that this is your first home, right? You can go to other home, but from here you can reach other places easily. So when we look at this, we can see that we have the Azure Active Directory, and yep. So this is the Entra, right? I'm still calling it Azure Active Directory. I hope very soon I'll be used to the Entra Admin Center. But this is the Entra Admin Center, and you can see it has the permission management, verified ID, and we have our includes the Azure Active Directory, like we saw in the slide. So if we look at this, we have our users, right? We have groups, we have devices, we have the applications, protect and secure. Then we have our conditional access. So if I come to this risky activity, we can see different stuffs here. We can still see conditional access right here. So, but now what I just want to do, I want to just touch on a few stuff before I move. So if we come to conditional access, right, we can choose to use templates from our conditional access when we want to create conditional access. We can choose to set up a new policy, and yeah, and then we can build what we want. So this is our policies, right? So you can see new policies from templates, upload policy file preview. This on preview, that means it's still going through the testing phase just to see how it's going to work out, right? And then we have what if. So for what if, right, I have a lot of people that use conditional access, but most times if I ask them, have you come here, they'll be like, what does it really do? So even when you're running PowerShell scripts, that's if you start using PowerShell, right, or if you're already using PowerShell, you know that what if is something that is very important. So what is what if? I will come and talk about this, but I just want to say this so that I don't forget and probably pass it, because it's very important when you're doing anything with conditional access and even with PowerShell. So what if generally, let me start from the PowerShell aspect, is if I'm trying to run a code in PowerShell, like a script, a commandlet, let me not call it a script. Script is like connecting different, running multiple commandlets. So if I'm trying to run a commandlet, just like a line of command, right? And I do not know what I will get, right? Probably I want to create a user and I've written the parameters and everything. If I hit enter, I'll probably create the user, right? But if I use that what if there, I would not create the parameter. What if will tell me, if you run this code, this is what will happen. That's just exactly what if does for PowerShell, to tell you, if you run this code, it will create this user. If you run this code, it will delete all these users. So that's exactly what if does. Now for conditional access, what do we do with what if? I've been in an organization, or I'm working in an organization where we used managed identity, right? Where we have identity, we don't have access to the password and all of that. Now, sometimes we have issues with some of those identities, and then not even that, we still use service identity, service principal, right? Now, the issue is that sometimes conditional MFA, once MFA is triggered on those accounts, right, there'll be a problem, because those accounts, they can't really start providing MFA. They are just logging in with username and password that we don't know. And they can't trigger, if you ask them for MFA, they can't tell you, oh, this is MFA. But we chose those accounts, right, because we are using them to pass APIs, right? So now the problem is, if you're using M365, you can probably come and turn on your MFA when you go to your users. There are many ways you can turn on MFA, like a lot of ways. Now, when MFA is turned on from conditional access, it would not show on that user account from here. So if you probably come to a user account, and while you're on the user account, you probably click on the multi-factor authenticator, right? When you come here, you probably see the, not this, let me just click on the user. So if you click on a user, let me come here, that should be the fastest way. So if you click on multi-factor authentication, it should show you whether MFA is turned on and all of that. You will see disabled. But if you come to conditional access and you say, if a user is trying to sign in from this location, trigger the MFA on that user account, what is simply going to happen is you won't see it turned on here. And if you're working somewhere where these policies, there are a lot, how do you know the policy that is affecting a particular user? We have a lot of policies. Do I need to be logging in and opening this first policy? Go through all of them. Which signal are you looking for? What is the signal? So if you see, that would be like a lot of work. You can do that, but it is a lot of work. But with what if I click on what if now, what I'm going to do, the most important name, you can see this is the most important stuff I need to provide. So if I click on this, I can say for this particular user, right, I will just select the user. Now, probably this is my service principal. Yeah, I will just click on it. And once I select it, right, if I click on this user, I can choose to say, I know the IP of where we are coming from. I can choose to put it. I can choose to put the country, put the device, but sometimes you don't need to put all of this. This alone is enough, right? Because this is the required field you need to fill. So once I fill in the information, just to maybe narrow down what I'm looking for, I can just click what if. So if I click on what if now, what if will do for me is it will bring this for me. Now, what is going to tell me is that policy that we apply. Now, if I look policy that we apply, if maybe there's a conditional access that has been set that will block, or even if it's not blocking, that would trigger when this user wants to sign in, I will just see them here, and it will tell me everything that will happen. And if you see policy that will not apply, it will just show me policies that I have, but it has nothing to do with the user. So you can actually use what if to troubleshoot conditional access. So I just said I should show you that before we do any other stuff. So when we come to conditional access, right? We need to create a new policy. But for named location, which is what I always tell people, if you want to just catch phone at first, you can trigger the MFA and the rest of it. But if you have a friend in another country, you can just say, come here, create a named location. Now, probably your friend is in a country. I can say, where's my friend in? I'll just say, oh, I have a friend in Australia. And then I would name this. Now, remember the name here, you have to name it the exact name most times, just so that you can help other people. Because if you name it, anything you name it here is what you'll see in the policy. So if I select Australia and I name this Nigeria, if somebody is coming to block a location, the person will be probably blocking the wrong location. So let me just show you what I mean. I'll name this AUS, right? So that you see how it looks like. So I can just do create. So now I have a named location. Now this is the named location. You can see it's AUS like showing here, not Australia, right? So if I come to policies and I'm creating a new policy, right? So this is the new policy, right? I have to name it. So I can say blocked location. Block location is fine. So if I name this block location, I can come here and now select, is this going to affect all users? Is this going to happen to selected users? This is not going to happen to any user, right? So if I do all users, you can see there, Microsoft is already warning me, you can block yourself out with conditional access. You have to be careful because sometimes if you select all users and you're setting a condition that would trigger, it will affect you that is the global admin also. And by that time, nobody can come into the tenant to get this sorted. So if probably in Australia and I'm coming to do this all users, right? I'm inside the tenant, it will be fine, right? Once I go and say block users that are in Australia, immediately I enable that conditional access and I log out. I can't log into that tenant again. I have to either send my password to somebody in another location to help me log in, and then I would try to solve the issue. I travel to another location to come back into my tenant. That's if I'm the global admin and I'm triggering this, right? I'll block myself. So most times it's always advisable you do selected users. You probably create a group, or even if I do all users, I can, okay, before I just do that, we can do all users. We can do selected users and groups, right? I can create, I can use this access for external users and guests. Remember, we're talking about B2B and collaboration, right? I can say, oh, I want to set conditional access for them. Yes, you can actually do that. I can use this based on admin. If maybe I have admin in my organization and I say, if this person is application administrator, exchange administrator, I just want to make sure that once my admin, they're in a particular location, they have to be secured, right? I can use conditional access, right? So now you can see I'm trying to create my assignments based on the conditional access. So first of all, I name it. I come to the next part where I have to either choose all user or select users based on the admin rights. If I'm not using that, I can choose to select some users or put users in a particular group and select that group. So I can use that to set this up, right? I can say, okay, I want to just select this particular user. So I've selected this user. I can choose to select all user, but when I select all user, I can come here and say, okay, I want to exclude the global admin. So I'll just come and say, okay, where's my global admin? I want to exclude him. So every other user, this would happen to them, but for this user, I exclude this user, right? But now I'm just selecting one user, so this doesn't really count. So once I do that, I can say which resources would this, if this user now is trying to access a particular resources, what is the resources that I'm trying to trigger this signal anytime they try to access it. So I can say cloud apps or cloud app. You can see it's telling me I'll probably lock myself. Selected cloud app. So I can choose to edit filter, which is in preview, or I can select a particular application. So I can say if they want to access the M365 app, that's when this should trigger. That means they can be accessing other stuff, but once they come to this particular application, this particular conditional access I'm setting would be triggered. So I can choose to say once they're accessing all apps and all of that, yeah, I would just say all apps. I can choose to exclude a particular app also. if I'm saying all apps, I can say, okay, exclude these particular apps. And here we still have based on user action and also authentication context. So it's not just apps. I can still set this based on actions I want from user. Probably I need security information from a user, or I need a user to register or join a device. So it's not just apps that I can set up here. So, but I'm just setting up apps because I want you to probably try this after this and just see what is going to happen. You can just create an account and send to somebody. So once I do this, and let me just come back to this user, Alex. Okay. So I've selected all apps. Then I'll come to conditions, right? You can see the user rights, right? I can choose to select the conditional access, right? So now I'm saying if this user is trying to access this app, right? And the user risk, remember I was talking of user risk, right? I can say if the user risk is high, if the sign-in rate is high, I can start choosing the control access here. I can say if he's using Windows computer, right, Android, I can choose to say if he's from this location, if he's using client app, those are, we have the modern authentication and the basic authentication. So we can choose to block those legacy authentication clients, so that because of security risks, right, we can still use conditional access to block that. And then we can filter device. We can say if the device is probably Dell, HP, the manufacturer is HP, we can also use all of these. But now I'm not going to be using the user sign-in rate. So I can say if the sign-in rate is high for this user, then block the user or require the user to change password. I can as well come here and say if the, sorry, that's user risk. So if the user risk is high, I can say reset your password. If your sign-in risk is high, I can say, okay, you just have to use your MFA. If you're using this particular device, yeah, you probably just have to provide your MFA. And I can choose to say, if you're from this location, right? So now I'm not going to use any location, all trusted location. You can have trusted locations also, but I want to use selected location. Now, if I do selected location, right, you can see the location I created is showing here. Now, it is not showing me as Australia, it's showing me as AUS. So that's why you have to be very good when you're naming, because if you're working in an organization, you just name something randomly. If somebody wants to probably use the same stuff, you would just make them do the wrong thing. So I can now select this location. So what I just did now, I'm saying if Alex, right, is trying to access any cloud app from Australia, right, what should I do? Now I can just say block Alex. So I've just created that. Now this session control is where we can use conditional app controls. There are a lot of stuff you can do here. So, but I would not be going into this, right? This just requires some extra explanation. So you can always read this in the documentation. So I was talking about your token, your the sign-in frequency. I can set your frequency, how often I would be asking you for maybe MFA and all of that when I'm using this. So all those stuffs can be set here. The session, everything, we can set them here. So I'm not going to be setting this up. So I'll just use this block access. Like, this is very straightforward. Now we can use report only. With report only, I can actually see what this policy will do without it taking any action. So I can just view what will happen, right? The user can still do what they are doing, but I'll just be getting reports. I can choose to turn it off, and then I can turn it on. So once I turn this on, I've created this. So if I create this, and let me still look at this guy to be sure I'm Alex. So if I just want us to try what I said, right? I was talking about what if. So let's see what if for Alex. So why I'm showing you this, because most people, they troubleshoot stuff without doing some necessary stuff, right? Like that example I gave for MFA, I've seen most organizations, you see them, they're saying, oh, our MFA is blocking this user. MFA is turned off, and I will tell them, have you checked conditional access? We have a lot of conditional access. We are checking them. We are not seeing anything. And when you show them this, they'll say, oh, so this is existing. And yeah, it has always been there. So I'll click what if now. Can you see what it's telling me? You can see the condition, the policy I just created. It's telling me that this policy, the policy that will apply to this user is this block location. And the grant control is block access. It is turned on. You can see I can actually see. So for me, I can click into that policy and do the necessary changes that I need to do. So you can see policy that would not apply. Sometimes if probably you create a policy and you did not configure it well, you will probably see the policy here, but you will see the reason it would not apply with using what if. So that's basically what if does. So if you want to try conditional access, you can actually just do with this, and then from there you can start doing other stuff. There are a lot you can do with conditional access. So when we come to here, we can see admin roles in M365. So these are admin roles in, sorry, yeah, it's still M365, the Azure AD roles that we can assign to users. Now, if you look at this, we have the built-in roles, and we can as well create custom roles, right? So if you can see the description, what it can do. You can see all of the descriptions. Now, we can assign roles to users that we want to. We can pick any roles from here and assign it to them. You can see showing that I'm a global admin, and I can choose to just click on custom role, give it a name. Then I'll come to permissions. Then I can pick different permissions I want. I can combine them the way I want, and then create my own new permission that I will be assigning to a user if I want to assign that to a user. So, but the other role I was talking of, I will just see if I can pull that up. Just let me come here. Just give me a minute. I have, okay. So this is, I have credit here for this particular, what do they call it? Azure Cloud, right? So this is Azure itself, the guy that most people feel is Active Directory. So, you know, when people are confusing you with another identity. So this is the Azure Cloud here, and this is the service that people confuse with Azure, right? If you tell them, oh, do you use Azure? They'll say, yes. Okay, which Azure do you use? The Azure Active Directory, I use it. So that's not Azure. So this is Azure, and this is a service inside of Azure, right? So if we come here, we'll still see the Azure Active Directory, and you can see the roles. So you can see the way it is, right? Somehow, without the Entra, it was almost like this, without the Entra. So if I go there and type aad.portal.azure.com, it should give me something like this in my M365. You can try that with your M365. Instead of that Entra, just use the AAD. You'll see something like this. This is like how the old look was like, right? So if I come to the rows, I can still see those rows here. Now you can see the rows I'm seeing here, right? I see global admin and all of that. Now, if I come home here, there are a lot of resources that I can create. I create a lot of stuff, right? And they are here. Now, if I want to manage a resource. Now, if we are looking at resource in Azure, right, we have what we call the management group. Let me type this. Management. Yeah, so we have the management group. So this management group is just like an hierarchy of how things are arranged in Azure Cloud. We have the management group, and from the management group, we have our subscriptions, and from our subscriptions, we have our resource group, and then we have from resource group, we have resources. Now, I'm not trying to explain Azure for you, but while I'm doing that, I'm just trying to get to a point. So if I want to assign an Azure role to this management group here, it can be inherited from the resource. So if I assign it to this root, it just simply means you're assigning it to the root, and every other thing under that root, the assignment, the permission you're giving to that person, the person would just, it will just be inherited. That means if I give somebody a owner of this management group, it just simply means these resources that is under here, the person is also the owner the resource group that I'll create, the person is also the owner, and the resources, the person can also be the owner because of the access that the person has. So if I come to this place and I come to access and control. So if you see access and control here, you can see now I can have my roles. And if I click on the roles here, you can see it's different from what you're seeing there. So this is the Azure role. And I can assign owner, and you can see we have built in just the same way. We have view details. And if you look at this owner, you can see grant full access to manage all resources, including the ability to assign roles in Azure role-based access control. So if I click here now and I say, let's see what this user can do, we can see the permissions here. And I think this permission, this is the best way to see it, right? So if you look at JSON, you will see the assignable scope. This slash just simply means is the root of this particular tenant that's this role is on. And if you see the permissions, star means all. So action, not actions. So this not actions just simply means what you can do, right? So you can see it can do everything. So if I close this, let's just come to Radar and see what Radar looks like. We can see the JSON, and yeah, we can see that the action is just to read and is on the root. So if I come here and I say, okay, this guy is almost like this, contributor is almost like the owner. If I try to click on this, what would generally happen is you would see the JSON, and you can see is on the root. The action is all, but not action. You can see what the contributor cannot do. So that's just basically what the Azure role look like, and the Azure AD role is the other one. So I would leave this now. I think I've been able to touch some of the basic stuff. I hope nothing else is left. Yeah, so that's just some of the basic stuff I spoke about that I feel you should just get like an overview of what it looks like. You can as well just create this conditional access. You can test it with a friend. You can probably even create for your location with another account so that you can sign in with that account and see what will happen. So if probably you're in UK, Nigeria, just create one account and try to create a conditional access for location and see what will happen to that user, the signal that you will get. So now if I come back to my slide, let me just go back to my slide and try to present what I have next. Let me, okay, sorry, let me just get to where the slide is. Okay, let me click on present. Yeah, so now the next thing we'll be talking about is Defender, right? So for Defender, right, we know that as technology is growing and we are trying to access our resources from different locations, we know, oh, it's the cloud, right? We can access our file from different locations. We can, yeah, we can sign in with different devices. We can do different stuff from our office device. We have our device that have been connected to our tenants, and then we can do different stuff. Now, how do we protect our informations? How do we protect our organization from data breach, from malware? How do we do all of that? So that's where the Microsoft 365 Defender comes in. So let's see what we have here for the Microsoft 365 Defender. So Microsoft 365 Defender is a unified pre and post-breach enterprise defense suite that natively coordinates detection, prevention, investigation, and response to threats. So what this does is it helps us detect what is probably going to be going wrong, and it's not just detecting it. You know, there's difference between, oh, I know this thing is going to destroy this building, and you know it will destroy the building, but what is going to happen after you knowing it will destroy the building? Are you going to watch the building get destroyed, or you would stop the building from getting destroyed? So that's the main thing there, knowing what to do after. So for M365 Defender, right, it detects, it prevents, it investigates, and also responds to threats, right? It will respond to threats. And now when we are talking about the M365, right, it is integrated into different experience, right? And when we are talking about that, we should be looking at what we call the identity. That's our identity. We have Defender protecting. We know I've been talking about our identity, our identity, our identity. So Microsoft Defender is there for identity. We also have it for endpoints. We also have it for apps, and then we have it for email collaboration. So I think each of them should be going. I should see each of them in the front as we are going, right? So now let me just go and see what we have next. Okay, so now we have the first one, Defender for Office 365, right? So we know Office 365, that's where the SaaS applications, where we do our stuff, right? We have the Defender for Office 365. So what does the Defender for Office 365 cover, right? Threat protection policies, reports, threat investigation and response capability, then automated investigation and response capability. So let's look at the plan so I can just see how to explain what we have in each of the plan. So when we look at the plan for this Microsoft Defender for Office 365, we have plan 1, we have plan 2. Now, if you look at plan 1, the features you'll be getting from plan 1 is safe attachment. Now, we know that when we are working in an environment, even generally, if you're probably sitting and your mail is out there, or you probably have an organizational email, probably you won't have a website and they see your website is doing well, there will be different ways people will try to attack you. One of the ways is probably sending attachments that have malwares, and what are they expecting from you? Click on it and then there's a problem, right? So with the plan 1, we can provide then the Defender, right? The Microsoft Defender will provide protection, right? That would check your emails, and when it's checking your emails, it will check the attachments that are being sent for any malicious content. So if there's a malicious content, then it would act on those malicious content. So that's what the safe attachment does. Now, the next one is safe link, right? If we also know about emails, right? Now, people don't just send links into emails. You see somebody sending something and they'll hide the link. They'll say, click here to probably claim this particular stuff. They want to hack your organization. They'll say, click here to check the document. Now, they'll probably embed the link in HTML and you don't really see what the link is. Normally, when doing security training, one of the best practice, hover your mouse over it, and also don't click on any link and all of that. But then with the Defender, right, Microsoft can actually verify those links for you, right? Once you get those links, the Defender would scan through the link and then verify that, okay, this link is actually safe or it is not safe. So that's one of the features we get. And another feature we get there is safe attachment for SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. So we know that when we talk about collaboration, sharing informations, and in our organization, SharePoint is like the powerhouse, OneDrive also for personal use, and then we have Teams. This is what we are using. And in this Teams channel, you can see that we can create tabs, upload files, right? So once we are doing all of those attachments, right, and using all those contents in our organization, a better way to keep us safe in the organization, so somebody does not just attach any kind of attachment that would cause harm or be a threat to the organization. We have the Defender for M365 Plan 1 feature helping us to take care of all of that. And another thing we also have is the anti-phishing. So anti-phishing just simply means someone is sending you an email to impersonate someone else, or they are sending you an email to see how to get information from you. So what Microsoft Defender does for us is that it will help us detect all of that. And we also have this detection happening in real time. That means as you're getting your emails, once you get those emails, you will see that you can be reading your content. While you're reading your content, the scanning is running at the same time and making sure that, okay, this email is here. You have to read the email before you get the content. If probably there's no content, right, it will hold the attachment and run the scan on those attachments, run the attachment on those links, and then take the appropriate decision on those particular files. If they are not protected, then you can now see triggers that will start leading to, okay, how can we prevent this from happening? How can we protect this user from clicking on this malicious attachment? So that's exactly what the plan one does for us. So if we look at the second one, right? So the plan two, right? It has everything that we are looking for in the plan one. That's exactly what first thing we should note. Then the second thing there is we would see that it is also doing some other stuff for us, right? We have the threat attackers and threat explorer, right? So this is just an Microsoft is using intelligence, right? That's latest intelligence on cybersecurity issues to take countermeasure before an actual threat. So this is Microsoft using the artificial intelligence, and then they take countermeasures before anything is how would I put it, before the threat is occurs within our organization. So that's what that one does. Then we have the automation, right? Automations, once we see anything that has to do with automate, it just means that is happening without you manually going to say, oh, let me click on this, let me click on this. So Microsoft, they use there's a set of security playbook that can be launched automatically. And once this is launched, right, it can help us to improve our system and also block all of these threats from having any effect on our identity or our resources. So we also have Attack Simulator. So what Attack Simulator does for us is when you have an organization, right, you have users, right, and how do you try to make your user understand more about all these threats that are out there? You know, sometimes you'll probably be telling your users, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and eventually one person will do it, right? So what Microsoft does for us is that we can say, okay, let's try to just act, let's try to create something like a thread and send it out and see what will happen with our users, who is going to click on it. And if maybe we set up like a training, we've done the general training, right? But we want to know those that still need training. So we can set up this attack simulator. And when we set up this attack simulator, we can send it out to everyone in the organization. And when we send this out, what exactly is going to happen is, if anybody clicks on it, nothing is going to happen, right? They will probably say, oh, hello, you've won 200 million for reading this article to the end. You're the first person to read it. Click on the link to claim your money. Now, probably one person that is actually thinking of 2 million before they left the house, or they've been dreaming of money and they feel, oh, I think this is my dream coming true. They'll just click on it. So immediately they click on that, what you do is you can trigger the training and tell them, okay, I think this is an attack that simulator, you just clicked on a link that you're not meant to click. Please go through this training. And yeah, so you can actually do that for your organization to show them how the real attack looks like. You just create a scenario of how the real attack looks like. So we have proactive hunt for threats. You can actually also scan, hunt for threats. The defender can do that. Then it also investigates incidents and alerts. So it investigates incident and it sends alerts to us. So that's what the Microsoft Defender does for us. And this Microsoft Defender, right? It was just normally I think it was just the security before it was changed to Microsoft Defender. Before, if you just click on there, you just see security. Most of that time, I think we just call it security and compliance, and you just go there and set up stuff. But now they kind of fine tune it so that we can now be targeting not just the normal security that we're doing now, but a broader range. We are looking at endpoints and other stuffs. So if we come to the next, what is this talking about? So this is talking about Microsoft Defender for endpoint. So we know endpoint, right, simply means how are we connecting to our organization? We are connecting through a particular endpoint, right? Our devices. So we have Microsoft Defenders for endpoint. And when we are talking about Microsoft Defender for endpoints, we are covering threats and vulnerability management, right? It goes through, it checks for, first of all, it checks for, it tries to assess our environment, access our devices, and check the endpoint and look for where probably we have misconfiguration. And then with that, it can also give us remediation that we can use, right, to solve those issues. And we also have attack surface reduction. So the attack surface is just simply the areas where attack can come from, how would I put it? The places that are open to attack. That's what attack the attack surface is all about, right? And if we can reduce the attack surface area, right, we are actually going to protect our endpoints. We try to reduce those surface areas where we can get attacked from. And also we also have next generation protection. For next generation protection, right, we have a lot of tools that Microsoft is using in terms of security, right? Where they are not just security, they are not just securing our network, right? They have intelligent tools, intelligent production applications that Microsoft is actually using. And with those applications integrated into Defenders, we can actually use that to protect our endpoint. We also have endpoint detection and response. So if maybe the previous security areas have been breached, right, the endpoint detection would actually get those threats, right? It will respond, it would detect those threats, and once it detects those threats, it would respond to the threats. And we also have the automated investigation and remediation. So for automated, what I will say, once it is automated, it just means that once it is happening, we don't need to manually start going to say, oh, we need to click this, we need to take this off. Microsoft will automatically just, based on our settings, right, it will handle those threats after investigating it, and there will be a remediation for it. And then we have Microsoft Threat Experts, right? So for Microsoft Threat Experts, Microsoft Defender for Endpoints has what we call hunting services, right? So what this hunting services does is it hunts for threats, just as the name is, and then we can actually respond to the threats quick. So if the threat hunting service is doing its job, it will search for all these threats, right? And once it searches for these threats, it would take immediate response, like it will respond to them quickly and it will respond to them accurately. So that's what the Microsoft Threat Expert there is all about. So if we go to Microsoft Defenders for Cloud App. Now we have things in the cloud, right? We have people accessing the cloud, and we have many cloud apps, right, that are being connected to our organization. Now we are looking at this, right, in terms of cloud apps that we have, right? There are some apps like other cloud apps like Dropbox. We have we want to probably use the Google Drive and the rest of them within our organization. So we have sanctioned apps and we have the ones that are not sanctioned. So what this cloud app does for us, it helps protect our organization. It helps look at those applications, that those cloud applications that users are trying to access, and when it look through those apps, if it is finding anything that is going to be a threat to our organization, then it would take action. So for the Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, you would also hear what we call the CASB, right? That's Cloud Access Security Broker, right? So what that does, right, it helps to get logs, right, APIs, right? It uses API and it uses logs, and once it is using all of that, it is used to actually see how we can not just protect our cloud apps, but third-party cloud apps that our users are trying to access. So if we look at the slide now, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps provide rich visibility to your cloud services, provide rich visibilities to your cloud services, control over data travel, and sophisticated analytics to identify and combat cyber threats across all Microsoft and third-party cloud services. So it's not just Microsoft applications, but third-party cloud services. The Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps is there to protect our organization from all of them. So I'll just also take you to the dashboard. Let's just see what they look like. So there's nothing serious there. So we also have for identity, that's the Defender for Identity. So when we are talking about Defender for Identity, before this was usually called the Advanced Threat Protection, right? So what it does is is a security solution, right? And it is used to identify signals, right? It detects signals that are coming in for identities, right? Your signals, your identities, they're actually sending signals, and it detects those signals, and it's trying to investigate those signals for threats, and it tries to also look for compromised identities. And yeah, with this, it can use this technology to prevent anything from happening to your identity. So it is there as one of the Microsoft Defender, right, integrations. And what it does, it looks out for signals, and these signals can be from compromised identity. It tries to investigate malicious insider actions, and once it does all of this, then it can actually take action. And one of those actions that we can look at, right, one of those stuffs that we can get from this identity is to monitor and profile user behaviors and activities. So we can actually use it to monitor identities, that's activities that users are doing, right, based on some behaviors. And you remember I also spoke about user risk, sign-in risk. So it's still part of those technologies, right, where we can use to monitor identities, the activities that is happening. Then we can use it also to protect user identity and reduce the attack surface. Attack surface just generally means the areas attacks can come in, right? With the Microsoft Defenders for Identity, we can actually reduce those surface areas where we can get attack coming in from, right? So what else can we do? We can use the identify suspicious activities and advance attacks across cyber attack kill chain. So if we are trying to use this, right? So let me just open one of Microsoft documentation. I just want to use that to talk about this. Let me see if I can find that. Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. Let me open this and come down here. So because that one is going to explain this more in detail. So I can always drop the link. You would use this link. Yeah, let me just. So this is Defender for Identity. Let me go down. Okay, so if you look at this, right, because that slide did not like have a lot of stuff. So typically attacks are launched against accessible entity, right? So such as a low privilege user, and then quickly move laterally until the attacker gains access to valuable assets, such as sensitive accounts, domain administrator, and highly sensitive data. Defender for Identity identified this advanced threat at the source throughout the entire cyber attack kill chain. And now, what it just simply means, if they want to attack, most times, most attackers, they don't just come, they come from the low privilege user, and from there they start moving up till they get whatsoever they want, they get into your domain, and then they start getting access. So if we are talking about the reckoners, the first thing we would see there is identify rogue user and attackers attempt to gain information. So what this does is attackers are searching for information about what this is all about is attackers are searching for information about users, usernames, user group membership, IP addresses assigned to devices, resources, and more using a variety of methods. So now what is happening is these people that try to attack your identity in your organization, they have methods, they have tools they also use, right? And what they are doing, they are trying to probably search for your IPs, search for your usernames. You know, if somebody wants to attack you, they don't know your username, they don't know where to start from, right? So first thing is probably, okay, this is the person's username. Now, how do we go next? How can we get the password? Once we can get the password, okay, if we are not getting the password, how can we get the IP of this person so that we can probably see how to change IPs and use the IPs? You know, all those stuffs, right? That's where this first part is talking about. Then we have compromised credentials, right? So identify attempts to compromise user credentials using brute force attack, failed authentication, user group membership changes, and other method. So once we are talking about brute force attack, it just simply means most times when you see attackers trying to attack you, right, they don't really know your password. So sometimes they just keep hitting with random password. They use password list, and they have different tools, like I said, and they try to see how to gain access. And the defender identity is there to protect us from all of these. And then we have the lateral movements, which detects attempts to move laterally inside the network to join further control of sensitive users, utilizing methods such as pass the ticket, pass the hash, overpass the hash, and more. So these are just other means that they can actually use to gain access to your resources. So one of them is the pass the ticket, pass the hash, and overpass the hash. So those are other ones. So we have the domain dominance, we have the investigate and alert user activities. So let me just leave it here so I don't take more time. So, but I can give you that link. You can just go through it. So I'll pull the slide again. Let's just see what this is talking about. So for this, we have investigate, alert, and user activities. So what this does is Defender for Identity is designed to reduce general alert noise, providing only relevant, important security alerts in a simple real-time organizational attack timeline. So this reduce general alert noise. Yeah, so this can actually be a problem, right? If you're always getting alerts just imagine sometimes, I don't know if you've noticed when probably you have alarm in your car and somebody is trying to steal something from your car, they just go, they'll hit the car, leave it, and you go out. Why is this car making noise? They are leaving it. So at some point, if you're getting a lot of those alerts, you know, when the important alert is coming up, you just feel like somebody is just trying to disturb that. Maybe it's goat or someone that is hitting the car, and then the person will see that at this point you're tired of coming to look at the alert because it's just too much, right? So they try to reduce it so that they give you like the relevant alert, so that when you see an alert, you know that okay, it is actually something that is happening at this point in time. So we also have the Defender portal, right? So with the Defender portal, you would be able to navigate across all of this. So if I just go to the Defender portal, I should be able to see this here. So the Defender portal, this is how you just get there. And let's do this. Where is security? Okay. Yeah, so this is security. So when we come to security, you can see showing security and compliance. That's what most people that have been using this part, they always call it. So if you look at this security, this, you'll see this is Microsoft Defender. You can see we have incident and alerts. We can see, get an overview here. This is a new portal, so nothing serious is actually happening here. We can get alerts. We can get email and collaboration alerts here. We can use the advanced hunting here, right? We can also use custom detection rules here. So all these are just loading because I've not really used this tenant. I just created this tenant so that I can have this license on it. So that's why I created this. So we can have actions, we can see action and submission. We can see threat intelligence, right? Where threat analytics takes place. So this should be at the front, this secure score. So we have Learning Hub, 3 days for trial, partner catalog. You can see the assets, right? So this is the identities, right? We can handle anything identity here. If we probably want to check for it, we can select users and all of that. We can do all of that here. And we can also look at email and collaborations. So we can investigate in anything that has to do with email. Explorer is just like us searching the content. We also have campaigns, reviews, message tracing. So if you're doing exchange online, you can as well use the message trace. So for this one that I create, the Explorer, you can see we can go for malware. We can explore if there's any malware. We can check for phishing mails, and we can take actions from here. So we can see the content malware also. If we have anyone here, we can choose to start selecting what we want to do. We can also get feeds from where we choose to get them from. So we also have the cloud apps that I spoke about here. You can see the cloud apps. Yeah. So we have all those stuff that we're just looking at a preview of them. We can always find them here in this place, and we need the license. So you can also use trial to just go through all of these. So that's for the Defender. If you just want to have an overview, this is how it looks like. And if you come to the landing page, you will see that it's also covering some other stuff. Like you can see compliance, devices that are compliant. This security score is at the front, but I will just explain it. So security score, basically, Microsoft just uses it to tell you how secure your organization is. The higher the score, the more secure your organization is. And it will also show you what you can do to improve these scores. So if I click on these security scores, you will see what I'm having. Like you can see my score in identity. That's what I have, 24, and apps 26. So this is my score, right? And I can look at recommended actions. So what are the recommended actions? You can see recommended actions is already showing. It's just showing me what I need to do to increase my security, and that will also increase my score. So you can see it's telling me require multi-factor authentication for administrator. So if I want to do this, I can just click on it and I can get like a general overview, description and everything and implementation, I can see how the implementation go. Then if there's any history on this, I can always see it. So if you probably click here, right, and this require multi-factor authentication for administrator, what this can actually do for you, it will just probably take you, this should take you, let me see this, to the conditional access we spoke about. So yeah, so you know why I said it to take you to conditional access, because you can, I already explained how you can do that for administrator. You can turn on multi-factor for administrator, so you get signal if this person has access to a particular resource or this person has this particular role, then we would require MFA to grant the person access. And if we come to policies here, I think, yeah, it's not, I think, there is for administrator. Yeah, so this is require multi-factor authenticator for administrator. So you can just use this and create one for yourself. So there's already a template there for you. So the security score has all of these, and then we can use them to, we can use the recommended actions to increase our score. We can go to history. We can see history of what is happening. And we can also see metrics and trends, right? We can see what's happening. So I'm not really doing anything here. I've not really done anything here. So if I have, I would have been seeing all of those trends and all of this showing. So if you probably have your own, you can just try to do one of the recommended action and see what's going to happen. Will it increase your score? Just give it some time. So sometimes if you do it, you might not see your score changing immediately. Just give it some time and you'll see your score would improve in terms of security. So let me just go back to this and hit the slide. And yeah, so this is, yeah, so this is SIEM and SOA. So yeah, so what this is actually going to be talking about now, this is security incident and event management, right? So let me read the definition here. The definition here is very self-explanatory, but I'll still talk about both of them. So a SIEM system is a tool that an organization uses to collect data from across the whole estate, including infrastructure, software, and resources. It does analysis, looks for correlation for anomalies, and generates alerts and incidents. So what actually happens here is we there's a tool, right? And what this tool is doing, right? It will go to our different endpoints, our identity, like we connect it to different points of information that we need or we need to protect, right? And then we get information, we collect information. Now look at what this tool is doing. If you look at this tool, it's just getting the information, right? It's collecting data from across different estates, infrastructure, software, and resources. That's what the tool is doing, right? And when it gets this, what is it doing? Is analyzing the data, is looking for anomalies, and also is also generating alerts and incidents. So now this is just generating the alert for us, and is also generating incidents. It is getting the tools and is looking at them. Now, if you, the whole idea about this thing, there's still AI running underneath all of this, because how will this tool know that this is supposed to be a malware? It is based on previous malware and recent malware that they have come across, they feed into this tool, and this tool can easily detect them, right? So once it detects it, it generates alerts. Then what should happen to the alerts? Now, we have what we call security orchestration, automated response. So what this does, right, is a system that takes alerts from sources. Now remember, this SIEM, right, is generating alerts. Now SOA, what is SOA doing? It is taking alerts from sources, right, such as SIEM system. Now the SOA system then triggers action-driven automated workflows and processes to run security tasks that mitigate the issues. Now we have these two, we have SIEM, we have SOA. One is collecting the information from the endpoints, and the other one is acting on what information it has collected. So if you look at these two features that I'm talking about, that's where you will see what we call Sentinel coming in, because Sentinel is built on these two guys, right? What Sentinel provides for us is actually what these two definition is talking about. So if we look at Sentinel, right, look at what Sentinel is doing. It's a Microsoft Sentinel provides integrated threat management, right? And now if you look at the Sentinel sitting at the middle, right, this is how it works. It goes like this, right? And then this response, it will still send this response back to use to analyze for future purposes, right? So now if you look at this, it collects the data, right? Now remember, we have the first security information and event management doing stuffs like this for us. And then it detects, right? What it does now, it detects with vast threat intelligence, like it's using intelligence system, the AI, to detect the information that is collecting, is processing it. It's saying, okay, this one is not looking normal. So this is a problem. Let's move this here. So once it gets those stuffs, it investigates it. That's critical incidents guided by AI. So it investigates this incidents, and after it investigates them, then it will now respond. So you can now see that those two definitions that we saw earlier, right, is actually what the Sentinel is providing. But now it is doing both of them. It's not just SIEM or SOA. It has both of them running when you set up your Sentinel. So Sentinel collects data, detects it, investigates it, and responds to it. And then it can still use those response that it got to use to process data that it is the next data it will be collecting. Because AI is basically, I'm giving you this data, and when I give you this data, you study the data and you use those data to make future decisions of when you're trying to make decision. So if it probably gets a particular threat that is looking new, and probably those threats are now kind of common, it can now start learning how to how will I put it, respond to those threats faster. If I'm probably responding to maybe a particular, let me say somebody is sending me something to mark, right? You just say answer is why do you come? Why do you come? I'll just say, why do you come? I'm marking it. If I see another one that is now saying subject, who is here? And I have like three options, and that's the first time I'm seeing it. I'll have to look at that one very well and say, what's the main answer? Because why do you come? I already know that's the answer from the three objectives that is probably there. And anytime I just see it, I just have to be taking it. But if I'm saying something new, it will be different, because I have to sit down and try to investigate it so that I don't give the wrong answer. Because at that moment now, I have to know what the right answer is, and is that right answer I would use to be answering the next what do I call it, data that I'll be receiving. So if I get a new data, it will be easier for me to detect, investigate, and respond to them. So if we go down again, let's just see what we have here. So Microsoft Sentinel provides integrated threat management. It's still the heading. So once we want to use this Microsoft Sentinel, first of all, we create it, right? I have one I created in my Azure portal, like the Azure cloud itself. Once you create it, right, you have to connect it, right? You need to connect it to where you need to create connectors. So connectors where you can be getting your informations from, right? Use connectors for Microsoft solutions provider real-time integration. So you can integrate it across different cloud platform once you set it up. Now you have workbook. So the workbooks, they are just to what they do is they monitor your data, right? And once they monitor your data, then we move to the analytics. The analytics is a built-in analytics alert. You would get notified when anything suspicious occurs. So what this does is Analytics, like the name implies, is analyze, right? If you get your data and all of that, the analytics is just analyzing the data, and then the whole idea of, okay, this is a suspicious data, or this is a suspicious activities that is happening, right? Then we have manage incidents. We can manage incidents. Then we have security automations. Security automations are just basically, I don't want to be, I want, once this is happening, this should happen, right? I can probably use the logic app, right? Create functions or create whatsoever I want that, okay, once this is happening, automate this, just do this for me, move to the next one, and all of that. So we also have notebooks. Use Jupyter Notebook to extend the scope of what you want to do with Sentinel data. So if you're familiar with data science, right, Python, right, Python is used for data analysis, right? Most people that do data analysis, they use Python. And if you are still familiar with the term, you will know that Jupyter is also one of the tools they use. So you can as well use that tool with the Microsoft Sentinel. So we also have investigation, right? Understand the scope of a potential security threat and find the root cause. So root cause is just simply something is happening. I know we can solve this stuff, right? That happened, but why did it happen? Because if you don't know why something is happening, you don't know how you can really stop it. So root cause is like going to understand exactly what actually made this particular stuff to happen. Why did this thing occur? What is actually responsible for triggering this particular event that is happening? So once we tend to understand what is the root cause, we can easily know how to solve the issue if it is coming up again. So if you're also thinking of root cause, you will still hear, I don't know if you've heard this term where somebody will say, if you know you have a problem, you've solved half of your problem. Because knowing that you have a problem, okay, this problem is existing and this is what is actually causing this problem. This is where this problem is coming from. It is easier for you to solve that problem, because if you don't know that there's a problem, you don't really know what you're solving, and you don't even know what is causing it. So understanding the root cause, finding the root cause of the potential security threat is also something that we get right in the investigation. Then hunting, right? Hunting is basically just searching for these threats. You're actively searching for them. Then once you get anything, then you trigger an alert. So we have communities, download content from the private community GitHub repository to create custom workbook, hunting queries, and more. So there's always a GitHub repository where you can see professionals. You can even see Microsoft. They are dropping stuffs that if you need to work with, like if you need a particular stuff that you need to use, you can always go there, download them, and then go through the documentation, and you can use them for what you want to use. You can create your own custom workbooks, hunt queries, and other stuffs from the community GitHub, where you go and download from the repository. So that's for Sentinel. So if we go here, so we have compliance. So for compliance, right, we have compliance now known as Purview, right? So what is compliance? Before we go to compliance, let me just show you the Sentinel. I'm not doing anything in it, so you just see how it looks like. So if I come to this, my Azure tenant, I can just type Sentinel. Sorry, this is not Sentinel. So if I click Microsoft Sentinel, yeah, discard. Oh, sorry, this doesn't have so you can see that this is my normal. Let me pull the one that have the let me pull the tenants that have. Let me duplicate this. Just give me a minute. I need to pull. Okay, yeah, so this is that tenant, the cloud, Azure cloud I showed earlier. So if you look at this Azure cloud, right, if I come to Sentinel, there are a lot of services. You can always browse through them, but if you search, you'll get there faster, right? So with this Sentinel, you can actually use this to create one. I should have one. Am I in the wrong subscription? So you can actually create one. So when you're creating one, okay, sorry, yeah. So this is it. So once you create one, you will just come to create workspace, and then you can name it. And once you name it, you create it, right? You put it in a resource group. So this is not Azure training, so I don't want to like do so much of Azure. So everything in, if you're creating a resource in Azure, you have to put it in a resource group. So you put it in a resource group, choose the location where you want it to be, the region, and then you name it. So now I created the one, right? That's the one I was, yeah. So that's this one here. So for me to access this is in ABC of Cloud, Aruchi, and the subscription is Azure and AI Show. So if I go to that subscription and just see what that looks like, if I come here, I should be able to look for the resource group, and yeah, this is, yeah, so this is it. Was this? No, this is storage. I thought that was where I saw it. Okay, sorry. I think this is, yeah. So this is the subscription name is AI, not the resource group. So the resource group is ABC of Cloud. So this is the Sentinel, right? I just created it. Nothing has been done. So if you look at overview, right, it's already telling me get started with log analytics, right? I can start to connect a data source, I can configure monitoring solution, then I can monitor my workspace health. So with this is just an overview, but this is how it looks like when you just want to set it up, right? You just create it. When you create it, then you can now start with your configurations and monitoring what you want to monitor. You can start collecting your data and working on them. So that's for this. So I would just share my screen. Okay, so what I will just do, I will just try to see how I'll be fast with this. So the module 4, MJ, please, I just wanted to ask, can I do the module 4 probably next week? Like, if there's any class, I'll do it very fast.
Yes, I wanted to
Hello?
suggest that also because yes, I wanted to suggest that so that it's not
Okay.
too much for them. I think we can do
Yeah.
that. Like it's just two modules. So we can
Yes,
actually
it's
do
not.
it before any class.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
That's
So
fine. Thank you.
yeah, let me just continue with compliance. So we have the security and compliance, right? So once we are talking about security and compliance, first of all, if you go to security and compliance, it is now called Purview, right, in Microsoft. And how do we look at security and compliance, right? When we try to see, I'm trying to look for a right term to use. When we're talking of governance, right, we have data, right? And this data, they have to be compliant. I'm still trying not to use the word because most times when I'm
So they
trying
have
to
to
make
meet
it,
regulatory requirements.
yeah, exactly, that's the right word I'm trying to use. So they need to meet those requirements. So if you want to get an overview of those your informations that are compliant, the compliance center is there, like the Purview. You can use it to check your information. You can have an overview, and then you can also set classification. You can set sensitive data. You can also connect to data. So once you go to the admin center for compliance, the first part you will be landing is just like an overview. It will show you your compliance score, and it will show you the one that Microsoft has helped you to get up to, right? And apart from that, you can also get insights, right? You can also see resources that are meeting up to some of your compliance requirements in your organization. So the Purview is just there to give us that look. So for this Purview, we can see, we say a view of how your organization is meeting its compliance requirements, solution that can be used to help meet, to help with the compliance. That means you have solutions. If you're not meeting up with compliance, you can actually have set up some configuration that would enable you meet up with those compliance requirements. Then we have navigation. That's to we can navigate access to alerts, reports, policy, compliance solutions, and more. Then we have add or remove options for a customized navigation pane. So all of this, right? I'll go to the portal so I can just show you more of it. So one other thing we have is this compliance manager. So what this does is, I was talking about security score. Security score, right, for Defender helps you to meet up to security score, right? Now we have compliance manager. When we go there, we'll see the compliance score and what it does. Like you can see from there, we have compliance manager simplifies compliance and reduces risks by providing pre-built assessments based on common standards. So there are some common standards, some stuff that you need to do that would help you meet up with compliance requirements, then workflow capability to complete risk assessment, then step-by-step improvement actions. Compliance score shows overall compliance posture. So it gives you like an overview of what is happening in how your organization is compliant to regulate governance and all of that. So let me just go there. So this is what the compliance looks like. So if you look at this compliance, there are a lot of stuff you can do here, right? So since this is fundamentals, right, it's good you just know that this is existing. So if you look at this is the home page. You will just get some of this. You can see your compliance score and you can start seeing that 0, 0, 0, nothing is happening here. Then it's sending me to visit the compliance manager. So with the compliance manager, right, I will see my score and I will probably see how Microsoft is also helping me to. So now this is my score. I definitely did not do anything here, but I'm having 49. So percent. And if you look at this score, 12, this 12,000 that I'm having is coming from Microsoft because Microsoft manage points. You can see the point I'm getting is actually from Microsoft. So me, I'm having actually, my own point is 162 and I don't know what is actually giving me that point at the moment because I just created this like within few hours ago. So, but if you look at this now, you can see that for me to increase my score, you can see I'm already getting improvement actions. So if I come to improvement actions, I can see improvement actions, what I can do. I can choose to click on it and yeah, it will take me to enabling this particular stuff. So if you look at this now, you'll see where we have the enable self password reset. So this is just basically, you don't have to be resetting password for your users. Your users, they can always just go ahead and reset their password themselves. So you can see the implementation, you can see the testing, then we have related controls, right? You can get here, then we have evidence. Evidence is more like you just putting in your documentation of what you've done, right? If you probably implement this, you can just add your documentation and say, oh, this is how I went through with implementing this. So that's just basically what this does. And you can see the solutions, assessments. So you can see the assessments here. We have the solutions, right? There are a lot of them. So you can pick any of them if you want. Then we have the alerts, right? This is where you get the alerts. And then this is your alert policies where you can use them. So you can add alert policies if you want to add policies alerts. You can come here and create yours. So if we come back to this compliance, we can see we have data classification, right? So different organizations, they have different ways they set up their data classification. We have the data connectors, we have alerts. So most times, some people, their job in the office as security person, administrator, this is part of what they do. They just come here, monitor alerts, see where it is coming from, and try to see what they can do. immediately. So these are reports, these are policies, we have roles and scope. So for these roles and scope, right, this is something I always tell people, right? If you want to work with this compliance, you can be the global admin and you won't be able to do some stuff here, right? Because you don't have some roles. So now these particular roles, you can see this is for Microsoft Purview solution. So one of the simplest thing that you can always try is this e-discovery. And if okay, this e-discovery might not be the easy one, but content search, right? So e-discovery is also related to how you can find content in someone's mailbox, but they've updated it with the standard and premium. But with content search, right, you can still search content in a user's mailbox, one SharePoint, OneDrive. You can still do that, right? But what you would note is when you're done searching for the file, right, and you want to view that file, you have a problem. Now, the reason you're going to be having the problem is because of these permissions. So when you want to probably take any actions in all of this, right, you have to probably go to the documentation if you don't really know which roles you need, because we have the compliance administrator, we have e-discovery manager, we have e-discovery manager, insider race. So you need to assign this to the user. So I repeat, even if you're a global admin, you would not be able to do some of the stuff until you assign some of these roles. And with that, you can easily work with compliance. So you can see compliance, right? I just spoke about content search. You can probably check a particular mailbox for something that you feel a user deleted, and you actually kept the user mailbox on litigation hold, which you'll probably learn along the line. So what it just simply means, litigation hold is there. Maybe the user is doing something suspicious. I have some managed organization, they'll tell you, please turn on litigation hold on this particular user. Now, with litigation hold, you might probably be in an organization, you're sending emails, you delete them after sending the wrong emails. You know, all of those things can actually be threats to the organization. So if you as a user, you're probably sending wrong emails to wrong client, forwarding emails, and you're deleting them immediately. Now you go to deleted folders, delete it. If litigation hold is turned on and there is no time frame, it means after 10 years and there is an issue, maybe there's a court case and they need to trace those emails, that your account, they've probably deactivated it and deleted it. With litigation hold turned on, you can actually come here and look for the content in that mailbox. You can also turn on e-discovery hold. So you can see all these things help us to see those that are compliant, those that are not compliant, and also not just see who is compliant. We can also carry out legal actions if we need to carry legal actions on somebody. So imagine somebody that has left your organization for 10 years and is telling you, I didn't do that. There was nothing like that, because he feels everything is gone, right? And you're telling him, okay, hold on, I have something for you. Then you pull content from his mailbox and he starts reading emails and seeing where he sends those mails to. You will see that all of this is still a way to control threats and all those, not just threats, legal action, regulatory rules that have been set in place, and try to see those that are compliant within the organization. So there are a lot of other stuffs we can learn in compliance, right? There are a lot of stuffs we can do, but for now, just get familiar with all of these, get familiar with the manager, and if probably you want to start playing with this place, I would say this is one of the places I always tell people to start with. Content. DLP is your setting data loss prevention. It's just more of selecting sensitive information words. You can choose to say, if you select a particular, if a user is probably sending information that has to do with some sensitive informations like driver's license, account numbers, you can choose to manage all those documents with DLPs. You can choose to say, this particular document, this is what should happen. If this is happening, this is what should happen. You can put watermarks on your document. just so that they can be compliant. So we can do all of that. So you can start with DLPs, which is something that I think is easier for you to start with. You can also start with this e-discovery and this content search. So this content search, you can just do it for a mailbox, even if it's not up to 3 months or 1 month, you can do it, then come here and search for it, a particular content for the mailbox that you've deleted, and see how you're going to get it. You can turn on litigation hold, send emails, after sending email, delete it, wait for like 2 months or 1 month, sometimes even a week, it doesn't matter. Just see what is going to happen if you use content search, how you will get it. You can leave one for like maybe 2 months, and because after 30 days by default, everything is gone from the mailbox, right? So just leave it for like 1 month and say, okay, at the beginning of the next month, let me see what this is going to give me. So all of this, while you're starting your journey, you can start preparing for the future. Why I'm telling you this, you can just create 2 accounts in your developer's account, send mails to those 2 accounts here, delete one, leave the other one, just keep them so that you would see what you can do with them later on as you're learning. So that's for compliance. Let me just see what I have here. I think I should be done now. So I've spoken about the compliance score. Let me just come to Service Trust Portal. So this Service Trust Portal lets me look for the website instead of bringing up the slide. I think using the website will be better. Let me see if I can search for it real quick. I just want to show you something. Okay, yeah, I've seen it. Let me bring it here. So this is Service Portal. So now we have what we call Service Trust Portal. Look at Microsoft Cloud. We have thousands of organizations using Microsoft. Thousands of organizations. We are sharing our information on M365. Now, probably in this channel, we have something we uploaded. Now, this stuff we are uploading can actually be our internal confidential documents, right? Now, how sure are we that Microsoft does not see what we are doing on our M365? So Microsoft's Service Trust Portal is there trying to tell you that, okay, we as Microsoft, we are actually following some regulations and standard when it comes to protecting your data. We don't just allow your data to fly out like that. And we have certifications, right, that are compliant. So if you come to the Standard Trust Portal, you can see the certifications that Microsoft have. So if you're trying to look up for GDPR, that is General Data Protection Regulation, you'll see that Microsoft, they already have that covered for you. If you're also trying to look for PCI, where it's Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, you can see they have it. So you can read more about it, how they are managing each of these data. They are trying to tell you that, okay, I know you have confidential data. This is the level of trust that you should have with us in terms of your data that is with us. So that's exactly what the Trust Portal is telling us about. So the next thing we have is, let me just hit this. So for this, we have Microsoft privacy principles. So for Microsoft privacy principle, these are just the key control, right? Putting the customer in control of their privacy with ease to use tools and clear choices, right? Transparency, being transparent about data collection and use so that everyone can make informed decision. So when someone is getting data, transparency is also very important. You tell them how you're using their data. So it's not just general about Microsoft privacy principle. It is general. If you're getting data from people, you have to tell them how their data is used. So in some parts, especially in Europe, right, if you're going to some website, you will see that accept cookies. I know most people, they don't read that, right? But that's actually compliance. They are telling you what they will do with your data, but most people just accept, right? But there's actually documentation, privacy information that you should go through, right? And if you click accept, right, if something is happening that is against your own, maybe something you won't like, right? The fact that you've clicked on accept, it means you're in terms with them. And if you even go to some places, some countries, if you go to probably church, and they say, oh, can you drop your number so that we can call you or email? In some locations, they don't do that. They'll just tell you, give me your number and email, and you see the church or maybe the business, they just start sending you text messages and be calling you, right? If you go to some countries, they don't do that. They would tell you, this your the information, we are collecting it so that we'll be sending you messages. They are trying to be transparent, and they will also tell you to accept. So if you tick accept, that's when they would do it, or probably you sign. So there was even a time I went to one church somewhere and I dropped my number. I did not sign. I never got the call, but they were calling my wife. And I was like, why did they send me a message and for the event and all of that? So later I was like, I gave you my number. I said, oh, you forgot to sign on that. So that's why. So all of that, you have to be transparent, and they'll tell you exactly why they are getting your data. So security, protecting data that's entrust to Microsoft by using strong security and encryption. So if somebody is with your data, you have to protect it. It's not just the principle. Generally, if you're working, protect data. Strong legal protection, respecting local privacy laws and fighting for legal protection of privacy as a fundamental human right. So privacy is still a fundamental human right. No content-based targeting, not using emails, chat, files, or other personal content to target advertising. So most people will say, I was just thinking about umbrella and I open Facebook and they're advertising umbrella to me. What was that? Sometimes you say, oh, I was thinking about, I was just chatting with somebody about buying maybe a car or buying a laptop. And when I opened Instagram, somebody is already showing me advert of all the available cars or laptop in the world. So most times people be like, oh, you're using my chat, right, to know what I'm thinking about or what I want to do. Or I don't know if maybe you've told someone, I think I want to fly to this thing, just, or probably you just go to search for ticket from US to Canada. The next thing, you're trying to browse on your browser and you start seeing adverts of cheap flights, and they are telling you all those stuff, right? So, and you're how do you know I want to go to this place? So it's still part of all of this no content-based targeting, right? They get your information and they be like, oh, this person, this is what you want, and they use it to sell adverts to you. So we would also hear people say, if they're not charging you for a service, then you're the I've forgotten the word they use. If you're not charged for a product, you're the product, right? So they give you for free and then they're using your stuff. So you would probably be hearing all those terms. So they are connected to this. So benefits to you when Microsoft does collect data, it's used to benefit the customer and to make their experience better. Yeah, exactly. So most times, like, oh, you choose your location. It's just basically to say usage location. If this person say in the US, okay, let's keep the data for this person around US, not simply because we want to use it to track the person's location. That's how you can easily access files that you store. So, if you're storing your files in a different location, you can access it. But what I always tell people, most people don't really understand how ping works. Ping is just how fast you travel to get your data and come back to your device. Your data is somewhere in a data center. How fast do you go and get that data? So most times, how fast you get your data, people don't really see it because they are not, the workload they are using or what they are trying to access is not really much. But if you have a family member or you have a friend that probably plays game a lot, right? If they are playing a game, you hear them crying sometimes, oh, I was trying to shoot this person and the person killed me. I was shooting first, or I was trying to hide. I've already gone to hide and the person still killed me. So now the problem is that they're playing game with people that are probably abroad, and those people are staying close to the data center. And it simply means if they're accessing that file, they're accessing it very fast compared to you that is somewhere else. So their ping is low and yours is high. So why I'm saying this is that sometimes you providing those information is still to benefit you. Because if I'm going to play the game and they tell me choose your location, I'm going to say Europe, and I'm maybe somewhere in America. They'll put me on Europe server. And when I'm playing the game, right, the ping I'll be getting, and they are connecting me to the Europe server. So when I'm playing with people in America, they'll be killing me, like they'll be winning me in the game. I'll be losing, right? Because I'm getting a high ping while they are getting a low ping. So sometimes these informations are also very beneficial to us. So if we go down to the next one, Microsoft Priva, right? So this is just more about how we manage our own personal private information in our organization. So we know we've spoken about how Microsoft is getting informations and how they are compliant to the information, right? So we also have us getting informations, and most of these personal or private information, we get them through Exchange, that's Exchange Online, chat, SharePoint, right? And once we get this information, Priva is just there to help us manage the privacy of this information. And when we are using Priva to manage this, it just tries to help us not to overexpose personal data. It tries to also control data transfer and also data minimization. So for data minimization, it's just about it identifies personal data that doesn't need to retain and prioritize remediation efforts to delete this data. So if it looks at the personal data and it sees that this data doesn't really need to be there, right, then we would have to remediate how we can delete the data. So the privacy management is just simply a place where we can manage all of this. We are sending our data into, we are keeping data, private personal data in our organization, and then we want to manage how we are holding all this personal and private data from individual. So the Microsoft Priva is there for us. So if we look at the slide, we have overview dashboard. Overview dashboard provides automatic updates about your data with important trends. Data profile provides a snapshot view of the personal data your organization stores in Microsoft 365 and where it lives. So if you have personal data, it will tell you you have this personal data and where it is living. Then we have set up policies that identify privacy risks in your Microsoft 365 environment and enable easy remediation. So the privacy risk is just, okay, this data, why are we holding it? And some people, it's about data also. If you probably even apply for job, or you're probably sending in your resume for somewhere, you're filling it on some website. I don't know if they've ever told you that they'll hold your data for 5 years, or sometimes even if you're going to apply for a particular visa or endorsement, they'll tell you we are going to hold every data you submit for like 10 years, right? So now, if you agree to hold my data for 10 years, how do you manage it after 10 years? Are you still going to be holding it, or you need to delete the data? So all of this is stuff we learn while we are doing M365, but it's still stuff that makes us, we try to get conscious of how we do stuff in the real world. Why I'm saying doing stuff in the real world is you going to go and apply in an organization with a CV that doesn't make sense, or you remove, you add wrong place of work, and you forgot that, oh, you feel that, oh, it was just probably 1 year ago I applied, or 2 years ago, and then you're applying again. Sometimes people don't know that this also causes rejections, because most organizations, what they do, they keep your data, they don't let it go. So by the time you're sending in another CV, you're coming in with you're now a consultant that you were not in your previous CV. Maybe you're now sending them your future dreams, or you've adjusted something, and by the time you're sending all of that, they are looking at their previous data. They say, okay, we have this personal information about this person. It's the same with this, that this same person is sending this. We are comparing it, is not the same. Now, the reason they can do that is they're probably holding your data, right? And you probably clicked on hold my data. If there is another job opening related to this, contact me. Now they are keeping that data for you, waiting for you to, you're waiting for them to contact you when there's another job opening and your data is there. Now, if you look at your CV, sometimes it has your phone number. Some people even put their house address up to the number of their house that they are living. Like, you just put your emails and all those stuff. So they are going to be holding all those information. And some people, they go ahead as far as putting their pictures on their CVs. So all those informations will just be living in somebody's cloud. And trust me, they can be using SharePoint to store your CV. They'll just have recruitment CV. They put your CVs there, and yeah, it's going to be kept in their tenant. So Microsoft Privat just tell us how we can manage all these private informations that we are getting. So for this, I'm very sorry. I was supposed to use Kahoot, right, to do this, but I'm very sorry. My Kahoot crashed. I have a lot of browsers open and I closed the wrong browser without saving. So for today, we would be coming to an end with this session, and I will try my possible best to be here to complete the other parts for you. And if you have any question at this point, you can ask me, and I will try my possible best to see how much I can answer the question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is really well detailed, very great insights. In fact, even me myself, I've been jotting down things. Thank you so much. Hello, do we still have our guys on the call? Because I know some people also, I think they have to leave. Yes, I know we're past behind time. Sorry about this. These are the, let me say, the theoretical aspect of M365. From next week, we are actually going to be getting our hands dirty because we have a lot of practical to now start doing, where you will be creating users, learn how to create users in bulk, using CSV, uploading, or even creating manual, and also using scripts. So next week, those are the things where from next week, we are going to be getting our hands, but these are the foundational courses that you need to know and then get familiar with, because this is what forms your M365 fundamental exam. So at this point, if you have any question, you can actually raise your hand and then you can unmute and ask your question. Thank you once again, Solomon, for this. It's been a very insightful session. Do we have any question anywhere? If you are shy, you can type in your question in the chat window and then we answer you if you don't want to speak up. Okay. I'm not too sure we have any questions. So another announcement is that this week assessment, okay, this week assessment. All right, thank you, Ayotunde. This week assessment has been posted to the channel. The link to this week assessment has been posted. It's supposed to be last week, and as usual, you have about 30 you have about 25 objectives and then 5 open-ended questions, which are theoretical, which you will just answer. So please, I've already posted it to the channel, and then you can attempt your you can attempt the assessment before the next class. And then I've also posted it here, which I've also post into the Discord channel. Just ensure that you try out all of these questions before the next class. This is what, remember, your attendance and in combination of this assessment is what guarantees your voucher, your exam vouchers. So it is, I cannot overemphasize the reason why this assessment should be completed. So please endeavor to try it out. And then till next week, we'll meet. I will see you once again, same time. Thank you so much for this session. It is really well appreciated. We thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving back to the community. We really, really appreciate you. So
It's fine.
guys, thank you, Doris, for sending the love. Thank you for sending that love reaction. I mean, thank you so much, every one of you. I really appreciate the time. And then till next week, we will meet once again. I know some of us, I'm not too sure whether they canceled this session. It's just me that just remember that today is another holiday. The truth about it is that I felt it was, I've forgotten that some other people are celebrating their holiday today, not So I completely forgot that. I'm so sorry about that. I'm sure I'm sure today is a public holiday for some people are just celebrating this. Maybe I would have made this session to be next week instead. So that's why we have less turnout. But all the same, we will also they will get they will get acquainted with the recording, and then so that we don't lose so much time. Thank you all. Do have a blessed weekend, and then
Mhm.
stay. Yes. Thank you so much, Solomon. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate it. Yeah, bye.
Bye.